Welcome to day 3 of Postcards from the Finish Line. We are brought to you by Highlands. Stop your cramp, not your race. Also brought to you by Polar. Chase your destiny. Jon Dunham, the producer of Boston, is with us. Last night, John, a premiere, full theater. How many people were there in the theater last night? It was amazing.
It was a 3,500 seat theater, and it was
Jammed.
filled. Yeah.
Jam-packed. And you did the Spirit of the Marathon 1, Spirit of the Marathon 2. I know probably after each one you were like, all right, I'm going to move on and go produce something else. And then all of a sudden, Boston. But you started working on this before the bombings in 2013, correct?
Yeah, I really only ever wanted to make one marathon film, which was going to be Spirit of the Marathon. I had no intention whatsoever of making a series of films, but one thing led to the next, and here we are. But Boston, has always been special, obviously, because it is the Boston Marathon,
right.
and it's something that I've wanted to do since I did Spirit of the Marathon. And executive producer Tom Derderian, who, of course, is a Boston Marathon historian,
yeah.
And we first started talking about the project in 2006, and we here at the Boston Marathon, and we've kept the dialogue going over the years. And producer Megan Williams and I started talking really seriously about taking the next step and really making it happen in 2012.
Right.
And we spoke with the BAA about it, and they were intrigued by the idea then, and of course that was all before 2013, and then 2013 changed everything, and for a while we didn't think we were going to make a film.
Right, they obviously had bigger fish to fry than thinking about making a movie.
Absolutely, and I personally didn't know how to feel about it. I didn't want to make a film about the bombings. I wanted to make a film about the Boston Marathon because I'm a runner and it's personal to me.
Right.
But what happened was I started to think forward to 2014 and that was going to be a very important year in the race's history. And I said, somebody should document this. So we continued on.
Right. So I know you ran LA years ago. Have you run Boston?
I have never run the Boston Marathon. I regrettably, I of course know it intimately.
You think?
But I am looking forward to running it. Maybe next year.
Right.
We'll see. Obviously, it's something I would love to do.
So the challenge of trying to cover the 2014 security has obviously been enhanced. You're coming off this, one of the biggest tragedies in the history, not just of running, but in the history of the U.S. And there's a lot of stakeholders, right? You've got the military, you've got everybody. How difficult was it? Because you had filmed in Rome, you had filmed in Chicago, now you're filming in Boston the year after the worst experience they'd ever had.
Each one of these 3 films has had its own unique challenges.
Yeah.
But yeah, there has been a certain kind of. I remember doing Spirit of the Marathon 2. I once said that there's no way I could have done this film had I not done Spirit of the Marathon before.
Right.
And I definitely feel that way now about Boston, and that both Spirit of the Marathons prepped me for doing this film now. But it was an enormous challenge. From a variety of aspects. The Boston Marathon course, in and of itself, is a challenge. It being a point-to-point course.
Narrow is a narrow road.
Narrow, and with all the additional security measures and everything that were in place, we really had to work long and hard to create a plan so that we could film what we wanted to film, and what it ultimately ended up meaning was we couldn't, both because of the security and the nature of the point-to-point courses, we couldn't repurpose the cameras as easily as I ordinarily would be able to do, like I did with the other 2 films. And so we just had to have a lot of cameras in order to capture it all.
So you couldn't move them. So basically, somebody who was at the start wasn't really going to get very many other places.
Yeah, exactly. So we ended up filming it with 56 cameras.
Oh my God, 56 cameras.
We needed so many cameras and so much crew in order to film the 2014 Boston Marathon that there were not that many cameras and crew available in Boston. We had to source outside. We brought people up from New York City and equipment in from different places in order to fulfill the need.
So we hadn't had an American win in Boston since '83, and here's Meb Keflezighi, the epitome of the American dream, winning the race. Right, 39 years old, just about to turn 39 years old, maybe a 1% chance against that field of winning, and it just meant so much to the city, to the country, to the world, to have Meb reclaim our streets and win the race. And it's like the fairy tale ending, right?
Yeah.
So were you, I'm sure you had so much going on, but when did you become cognizant of the fact that, wait a second, we might have an American win here? That would be a great way to culminate our film.
Well, that would have been after the fact. I mean, I felt, as you said, you know, I of course knew that I'd been in touch with Meb before.
Yeah.
He ran the race, and you know, but he wouldn't have been, you know, the pick to have won it
by anybody.
But the fact that he did was truly extraordinary and truly special. And you know, I said to Meb last night at the premiere, thank you for winning the race, because it
exactly,
you know, it really makes for an incredible, uplifting ending to the film.
Well, here's again coming from Eritrea, family of 10, not being able, coming here to San Diego when he was 12 years old, and he couldn't spell the word cat. You know, and next thing you know, he's an Olympian and a silver medalist, and then he wins Boston, really to change everything. So picking your stories, the great thing about Boston is there's such great history. So getting access to some of those archival, the footage from way back, how hard was that?
We started the process of looking for the archival footage when we started the film.
Yes.
Even, the development of the film. So we were gathering stuff all the way through, and every time we visited with and recorded interviews with champions, we always had to look through their own personal archives. Right. And so that was a process that went on for literally years as we were making the film. And we just completed it a few weeks ago, so it was a huge undertaking.
We were saying you go from, you know, like the Boston Philharmonic, Matt Damon doing the narration, so much great stuff came together, having a live symphony orchestra playing last night. You know, it's like, okay, that's your drop the mic moment, right? I've just made the ultimate running movie with an American winning at the finish, and coming back from the devastation of the bombings and the feel-good moment of 2014, we came up with this great movie. So what's next for Jon Dunham? I'm imagining it's not a running movie.
You know, the thing with films is it takes putting all the elements together, right, you know, in order to make it happen. You know, that you got to have the right story and the right creative forces behind it, and the financing, and everything has to come together, you know. So there are a lot of projects I would like to do. I have some specific ones that I'm really closing in on.
Good.
But we'll see how the elements come together, and you know, that will be the determining factor.
You know, I watched Spirit of the Marathon 1, and then I watched Spirit of the Marathon 2, which I thought was a huge leap. What you did at the Rome Marathon. Spirit of the Marathon 1 was great, but Spirit of the Marathon 2, just camera angles, and there was just, obviously you had matured as a filmmaker. This film goes obviously to another level. When you look at this particular film and the storylines, because it's all about the stories and the storytelling. Rob de Castella, Australian Boston Marathon champion, you know, 207. Talk a little bit about how his story touched you, because I love when people give back, when they use the sport of running to change other people's lives.
Well, one of the things that I did in the making of the film was going back to the looking for archival footage.
Yes.
Was I watched a lot of Boston Marathon broadcasts.
Yes.
I've probably seen more Boston Marathon race footage than anyone alive.
And you're lucky, because most races don't have it. They have like no footage. Boston has been on television and filmed it for forever.
Yeah. So I went back and I just started looking at all those years, everything I could get my hands on, even if they weren't necessarily years that are hugely memorable.
Right.
You know, like a Catherine Switzer being,
right,
you know, harassed on the course or what have you. I looked at everything I could find, and one of the things I discovered was a mention of Rob de Castella and his Indigenous Marathon Project, and I thought, what's that? That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So got in touch with Rob and went down to Australia, and
that was
we did
amazing.
some filming there. And yeah, it was really something very special. And Rob is I would call Rob a true champion. Obviously he was a world-class champion marathon runner, won Boston here in 1986, but just a real champion human being. And to go there and to witness what he's doing and to see how the Boston Marathon and his win here is now creating change, positive change in other people's lives in Australia is really special.
I think what a lot of people didn't realize was the connection between Greece and Boston, right? Athens and Boston. And I thought the story you told from post-World War II of the athlete from Greece who ended up winning the marathon, and when he was told, you shouldn't even be running, you're not healthy enough to run, and Greece was going through the worst of times. Again, running, changing the world.
Yeah.
That was another phenomenal story.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, we can chase sort of the idea of running with a different purpose in mind. What we call charity.
He was the first charity runner. You're right.
Today, back to Stylianos Kyriakides, who won Boston in 1946. Absolutely.
And when he wins it in 46, his country everybody was starving, and the amount of they filled up ships with food to take back to Greece because of the notoriety of him winning the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect, obviously women in running. We're here at the Boston Marathon Expo. There's 30,000 people running, and I'm guessing probably close to 50% are women here running. And that's changed from the days when Catherine Switzer they tried to shove her out of the race because women weren't thought to be able to physically run the distance, and Boston sort of changed all that.
It's hard to imagine.
Kicking and screaming.
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to imagine. It wasn't that long ago, really.
No.
But Bobby Gibb in 1966, and then Bobby and Catherine in 1967. They really shook things up, and yeah, like you said. So now.
And that to me is a race that's changing perceptions and changing not just the face of running, but the face of endurance, because a lot of those runners end up going over to triathlon and obstacle racing and realizing that it doesn't matter what size I am, it doesn't matter what gender I am, I can do this as well as anybody else. So when you went to the BAA office, I thought that was one of the lighthearted moments of the film, which I loved, was they're unpacking stuff that looked like they hadn't seen in years, trophies and shoes and things like that. They've kept everything.
Yeah. That was fun. We went into a closet and indeed started digging through boxes, looking for things. And Gloria Ratty, who has been a part of the Boston Marathon for decades.
Yes.
She's wonderful, and it's kind of a true sort of discovery moment as we're pulling out old shoes, and you can see the excitement on her face.
The other thing is, a lot of times we see the Kenyan athletes and the athletes from Ethiopia as machines. They come over, they win dollars, and they go back home. I think you did a really nice job filming the athletes out in Hopkinton being with the kids, right? And making people realize that these are wonderful human beings who happen to run fast and happen to grow up in the Rift Valley, but just humanizing those athletes, a lot of times that doesn't happen, and they've been winning races in the U.S. forever. I think they did a great job doing that.
That's a really special program out in Hopkinton, and you can just see how the kids engage and the athletes themselves really enjoy it. And
right.
And that's absolutely right. It's not just a moment of nose to nose racing, and trying to win and take home prize money, but
right.
It's a real human moment.
It's sharing cultures.
Yeah.
If you look at the athletes of color racing here, athletes from East Africa, from Ethiopia, then the wheelchair athletes. Boston was really one of the first events that showcased wheelchair racing, where the athletes made prize money back in the day. Or not back in the day, today. So, from wanting to do a film about Boston, and then unpeeling those layers, what did you discover about this event that you didn't know?
When I first took this on, I was excited about it. I felt honored, when the Boston Athletic Association said yes, they would like to go ahead and make the film with my filmmaking team. And but then I remember somebody telling me early on, like, "Wow, you're gonna take that on? Like, that's
good
big."
luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "Well, why would you say that?" I was so excited about it, and then once we got into it, I was like, "Oh boy, yeah, this is there is a lot of history here," and it did become a challenge, trying to figure out what to include and what not to include.
Right.
And we made the best decisions that we could, but
Sure.
it's obviously there's stuff in the film that's not in the film that I would love to be in the film.
If you have a 4-hour film,
Yeah, exactly.
that's always the toughest part, is what ends up on the floor.
Yeah, so I would say, in terms of discovery, I mean, there were trivial discoveries related to the race along the way, sure, but it was, I would say it was more of kind of, how do we tell 118 years of marathon history, in 2 hours? And,
Yes.
That took some effort.
So for folks out there who were not here last night and had that opportunity, Fathom Productions around the country, 500 theaters this Wednesday night, the 19th, people can watch the documentary Boston. And they just, is it fathomproductions.com? Is that where they go?
Fathomevents.com.
Fathomevents.com, and there's theaters in not 500 markets, but 500 theaters around the country, probably a theater near you where you can get your running group, your triathlon group. Highly recommended. The film, if you are an endurance athlete, and even if you're not, it's a movie that will make you laugh. It'll definitely bring back poignant moments from that 2013 race that we really should never forget. And more importantly, you captured the essence of an event that people all over the world, it's on their bucket list. They want to come here and do this race. Now they have an opportunity to go watch your film. Where will you be Wednesday night?
I'm actually going down to New York City, and I'm going to enjoy it in a theater with hopefully a theater full of runners.
I love that. Jon, congratulations. We've chatted a lot over the years, going back to when Spirit of the Marathon, the first one, came out. Yeah. And just your progression as a filmmaker and just what you're doing for the running community, because this is how we inspire the next runners. This is how the millennials come in and watch that film and go, I want to be part of this world. It's pretty darn special, because it's people who are running for themselves, but running for other people. It's events like this that change lives for the better, and absolutely. Families that have gone through trauma that understand that people are there to give them support. Very, very special.
Thank you so much.
Jon Dunham has been our guest again. We are at Highlands Postcards from the Finish Line. Stop your cramp, not your race. We're also brought to you by Polar. Chase your destiny. Hold on, everyone. We will be right back.